Welcome to Little Wargame, episode number 22. I'm Atano Circus, and today we're going to learn how you can have an unkillable, infinitely healable army that doesn't do anything to your opponent until it wins you the game. So with that, we're going to unpause, ding, and we're going to see up in the top left-hand side, Slammer4, who is one of the top 5 players of Little Wargame, no matter which way you take a look at it. And on the bottom right-hand side, we have Marien. For those of you who've been playing a lot of Ladder Edition 11, which is what this particular game of Ravage is played on, you would note, of course, that Slammer 4 is going for the ever-popular and pretty useful One Den expansion. Now, at really high levels of play, the One Den expansion actually doesn't get a whole lot of worker kills, so much as it delays mining time and gets a bunch of good scouting information. However, it has the potential to destroy your opponent should they make a mistake, and nets on average 1 to 2 worker kills. And so, even though it's being slowly phased out for Castle First, it's still pretty viable. Down here we see a Castle First by Marien that goes immediately into a watchtower. This is normally indicative, prior to this game, at least in my expectations, of someone who's going to make a fortress and they're going to make dragons, but we don't see that. Instead we see a workshop, and that's very curious because catapults are units that fire an AoE projectile. It can miss, and it has the potential to hurt your own units, and it can end in a disaster if you don't know quite what you're doing. But we see that the value of the tower is actually that it manages to keep this unit of Slammer 4s off and away, and this wolf won't dare enter now that there are workers to block and a watchtower to ping it as it tries. That's not to say he's going to be entirely passive. He's going to get a lot of damage done on this wolf that's in the inside here as Marien completes his wall. Now notice this forge going down immediately. Let's talk about that. What's great about Mech right now is that for every armor upgrade you get, instead of giving +1 armor, as with most other units and abilities and everything in the game, Mech units, catapults, ballistas, and airships get +2. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And so essentially, if your opponent's on max attack upgrades and you're on max armor upgrades, you are actually usually twice as efficient as a unit as you were previously, and this knocks some units such as the wolf entirely out of the game. We're going to see that Marien expands in a way that he will do so throughout the rest of the game, which is to send a worker by them lonesome and to try and put a tower down. Now this catapult almost kills these two wolves, and should have actually. It's going to give them Marien, that is, a bit of a heartache. Some excellent control over here as Slammer 4 is microing the wolf in the main base, and the wolf over here gets the worker kill. Now both of those wolves die, but it is a good delay tactic. And now we have to question, as this advanced workshop goes down at roughly the 415, 420 mark, why are so many towers going to start going down for Marien? And it becomes obvious when you think about it. I'm going Mech. I have catapults. My opponent has not sent in a flood of units. If my opponent were going Mass Wolf, for example, they would have surrounded this castle and tried to kill it off as it was building or prevent it from building for much longer. There's no snakes, so they're either expanding or they're attacking into something that can harm me. And what could possibly harm me? I only have anti-ground units aside from buildings, so probably dragons. And lo and behold, ding, you would be correct. Slammer 4 is bringing up dragons. Oh, and because he's good, he has his third base up as well, and is mining quite efficiently. Now notice this attack that's about to come in from this side, going down over into this angle. First off, an excellent angle. Stops the wolves or any ballista that are out from firing on these dragons and them taking any extra fire. And now notice the importance of these watchtowers. They are not, in fact, there to actually just poke at the dragons. They have that incidental benefit, but the real cause and benefit of them is that the small numbers of anti-ground units or ground-based units that are possessed by Slammer 4 are actually not going to be as efficient. They have to spend the time getting on top of the buildings, and because they're attacking buildings, they're holding still, which will make the catapults able to fire on those wolves and consistently hit them. Also, give some space for the ballistas and give some coverage for the workers. That was an easy defend as well, because as we see, there are now already 2 armor upgrades plus 4 armor total on all the catapults, ballista, and the airships. And that means that dragons can't do their normal action that you would see against an airship that has a ballista in it, which is to kill the airship and then send some other units to clean up the ballistas. Now we're going to see something happens pretty often over here from Marien, which is whenever he thinks that he's ready to go and can challenge air superiority, he's going to maintain it and then send catapults. And here's what I mean. Dragons are up over here, and Marien has an airship with 2 ballistas, and these ballistas are going to be very difficult for the dragons to kill, cost inefficient in the extreme, and so it's going to get 1 dragon, maybe even a 2nd dragon. But while that was all going down, 2 catapults over here were getting their fair share of worker kills and splitting the focus up for Slammer 4. Even though the units are not being microed so intensively, the number of them that are being microed across various portions of the game and of the map are actually putting a lot of pressure on Slammer 4's air superiority. He has to engage airships with the full might of his dragons or they could escape. Now Slammer 4 is making some good moves here while he was being harassed quite a bit, to an extensive degree even, and has to play cleanup over here with the dragons, now with +6 armor. These units are only going to take 1 to 2 damage at most from wolves, and so dragons have to be the cleanup force, but Slammer 4 has the good move, putting the watchtower to defend a location and grabbing the 4th base, and now we see a tactic pretty common. At this point, Slammer 4, he's got a nice economy. He wants to see what damage he can do, but he's going to get nothing done, and here's why. Even before the cavalry shows up, notice what Marien is doing. He has an advantage, or they have an advantage, but it's not an overwhelming advantage that will guarantee the win of the game. And even if it were, going to play a slower and more relaxed style. So notice, a ballista and a tower. A ballista, 2 catapults and a tower. 2 towers and a catapult. The point here for Marien is not to engage the enemy army, move out, get surrounded on all sides, and dumpstered on because of the map control of Slammer 4, while constantly trading units out and hoping for a big successful fight. Rather, it is to simply secure what has already been placed. And the combination of tower, ballista, maybe a little bit of airship, micro fanciness for good measure, and catapult mean that these wolves cannot take efficient fights. And in fact, any fight that they do take will be to their detriment. And that's why Slammer 4 needs to have more bases. So, excellent play so far by Marien, not risking it all on a giant move that could win the game in glorious fashion, but also backfire. Instead, small, well-placed moves. And notice the armor has this benefit. If your units are super tanky, it's really hard for them to get gunned down as they're doing drops. Meanwhile, an excellent attack over here by Slammer 4. So he's recognized in a game, or in a game or two, the essential weakness. Yes, I cannot kill your units. However, because you're not playing racks, your attack and defense upgrades aren't applying to your workers. That means that they're very easy to kill. Also, attack upgrades on wolves are pretty efficient at killing buildings, and we're going to see more of those splits happen in the future. Also, another good move over here by Slammer 4 is that these catapults do fire a dumb projectile that can't guarantee where it will land and does effect in an area of effect enemy units, as well as your own. And so because of that, the same principle that makes catapults really good against enemy workers will, if they're attacking your enemy units in your own worker line, will make them very efficient against your workers. So some good moves over there by Marien. And by Slammer 4 both. A couple of workers go down on either side, and we're down over here to actually fewer for Slammer 4 than for Marien, but more bases, which means it will even out over time. A very quick base is taken over here, and you've got to wonder, like, hey, isn't this game going really well for Slammer 4? It's like 4 bases to 3. The supply is pretty good, and Marien's not even spending all this money. But here's where the difference comes in. And let's slow down the speed to take note of that. Plus 10 armor is 12 total armor for catapults. Plus 4 damage is 14 damage for wolves. These wolves have to do 150 hits in order to kill a single catapult. These catapults just have to get it right twice. Not a good scenario. Another excellent play over here, though, by Slammer 4 to try and buy some time. Hey, my wolves aren't efficient, and I need more powerful units, maybe spellcasters, maybe units that can actually chunk through the armor, such as werewolves. So I'm going to expend my wolves to try and kill your buildings, because they're very efficient at doing that. And you can kill them quickly, but there are a lot of them, and I need to trade out the supply. So he does get 1 upgrade. He might get another upgrade. But there's a small problem, which is that Marien has not been content to let this happen throughout the time, and if you stretch yourself thin by putting out too many wolves, as Slammer 4 is discovering, you leave Marien wide open, because now, hey, if you're transitioning from Dragon Wolf into Dragon Wolf Werewolf, you must not have the surface area to cover all of the air that you were once so dominant in. And so that's why we now see that Slammer 4 has had his tower go down here. Marien is going to be able to siege this nearly uncontested, and what seems surprisingly unintuitive, an even game in supply just suddenly snowballs into a 146 matchup up against Slammer 4, not in his favor in the slightest. All of these workers are going to go down, and with all of these upgrades and these numbers, even castles will fall quickly before Marien's catapults. They're attacking every building that they can see, and it takes the full fleet of dragons to even try and kill one of them. Inefficient in the highest degree versus efficiency. You don't need a ton of bases. You just need good map awareness and armor upgrades. And soon, oh very soon, we will see exactly what that fight looks like. By the way, Marien hadn't been spending his money as well as he could have. You might attribute that to sloppiness. I attribute it to the fact that Marien now has +5 armor and +4 attack, and there is no way that Slammer 4 is going to win this fight. The ballista just can't be killed by anything not called a werewolf. There are airships that can make them never escape. The dragons, that is. And these catapults are so large and in such number that surely everything will fall before them. So, to recap, castle first, tower, workshop, house. Get a forge immediately, and then you too can be on the warpath with +2 armor means, and you can make it happen. I'm Atano Circus, and I'll see you back in LittleWarGame.